Good morning, my dears. It's time to learn how to simplify radicals. I hope you had a really good weekend. So we're going to look at simplifying radicals, and we've done this already with problems like square root of 20. But now we want to look at problems with a coefficient in front, which is 4 square roots of, let's say, 50. Now remember, this means 4 times the square root of 50. So let's see how we're going to do that. We're going to start with a couple problems here. So we're going to start with the first problem, which looks at 2 square root of 108. Now we can see 108 is not a perfect square. What do we decide we were going to do? We're going to factor it into a factor tree. So we have, let's use 2 and 54. You don't have to start with 2 and 54, but that's the choices you have here. Now we're going to use 54 as 9 times 6, and 9, cross the 54 out, 9 is 3 times 3, and 6 is 3 times 2. So we're doing exactly the same thing as we did before, where we factored and used prime factorization. We used prime factorization to simplify the radicals. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is find our pairs. So here's a pair of 3s, here's a pair of 2s, and there's an extra 3 right here. Now remember, the pair is on the outside, but the single stays on the inside. Okay, so now we're going to do what we decided to do. Here's our square root. So where's the pair going to go? The pair of 2s is going to go out here. The pairs of 3s is going to go out here. And then the single 3 is going to stay inside. But wait a minute. We forgot that there was this lovely square root of 2 here. We need to include that in our answer. Not the square root of 2, that's just a whole number 2. What am I talking about? This whole number 2 needs to also go in front of our whole numbers. So our final answer would be 2 times 2 times 3 square roots of 3. That would be 4 times 3 square roots of 3, which is 12 square roots of 3. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at first, factoring using prime factorization. Second, taking the pairs and putting pairs on the outside, singles on the inside. And then lastly would be to multiply if necessary. All right. I want to look here now at the square root of 60. Here we have 60. The 7 is on the outside, and I want to factor the square root of 60. So, start out with 60. We'll do 6 and 10. We'll factor 6 into 3 and 2. We'll factor 10 into 2 and 5. So that was our prime factorization. That's step 1. Step 2 is to put the pairs on the outside, the singles on the inside. The pairs go on the outside, the singles go on the inside. So the pair of 2s goes on the outside, the single 3 and 5 goes on the inside. Okay, now don't forget we still have the square root of 7 up here. Square root of 7 has to come and join the whole number on the outside. So now our final answer is 14 square root of 15. There is our final answer. 14 square root of 15. Okay, I'm going to try 2 more just to keep everybody on track. Let's look at this next one, which is -10 square root of 125. So we're going to take square root of 125 and factor it. So 125 we can factor into 5 times 25, and then 25 can factor into 5 times 5. Okay, now we have this -10 that needs to be on the outside. We have a pair of 5s that goes on the outside, and then we have a lovely single 5 that needs to stay on the inside. Okay, remember, pair, out, single, in. Okay, final step, multiply. So we're going to find out that these two multiplied together gives us a -50 square root of 5, and that's our final answer. Oh, I hope you're catching on to these. Okay, I'm going to try one last one. I'm going to jump down here to this 8 square root of 500. So 8 square roots of 500. The 8 is going to stay on the outside. Now we're going to just work about the 500. Okay, we ready? 5 times 100. 2 times 50. Wait, some of you might have said, wait a minute, I could have used 10 times 10. Let's do that instead. Let's use 10 times 10 instead. So we could use 10 times 10. Hey, that's a pair. I don't have to go any further. I can stop right there. So I'm going to circle this pair of 10s, because that's a pair. There's my single. So the pair goes on the outside. The single stays on the inside. And then we multiply. So I got 80 square root of 5 as my final answer. So we want to look at, okay, remember we have our steps that we would like to follow when it comes to simplifying radicals. The steps are, see if you remember, the first one is what? It's prime factorization. You factor the number under the radical. Only the radical. You don't factor anything else, just the radical. Second thing you're going to do, the pairs. If you have a pair, it's going to be outside the radical, and the single numbers are going to be inside your radical. And the last step, if we need to, is to make sure that we multiply anything that's inside or anything that is outside together. We're definitely going to do more of this. Have a good night.